Ready.
Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to our Fruita City Council meeting. So we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Shannon, would you please call roll?
Mayor Kincaid, Councillor Bremen is excused absent. Councillor Buck. Here. Councillor Linhart.
Here.
Councillor Harvey.
Here.
Councillor Cry.
Here.
Councillor O'Brien.
Here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and do a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. If you'd please stand with us. We'd like to take this opportunity for allow all faiths and beliefs the opportunity for a silent prayer. Thank you. If you'd join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda?
Mr. Mayor, there are no changes to the agenda.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I move to accept tonight's agenda. Second.
Councillor Linhart.
Yes.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes.
Councillor Buck.
Yes.
Councillor Cry.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, we're moving into our proclamations and presentations. We've got one proclamation tonight, and it's proclaiming Friday, April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day. I've asked Heather to read that for us tonight.
Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lowering our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Joel Kincaid, Mayor of Fruita, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the city of Fruita, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, we urge all citizens to plant and care for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations.
All right, thank you, Heather. We've got Mark Mancuso here to accept this. Did you want to come up and say a few words? Well, Lori's got the timer going, so we're all set.
Thank you guys for your support in this, and we're lucky in Fruita to have a council that supports Arbor Day and supports the trees in our community. So yeah, thank you guys.
All right, well, come on up and get your certificate. Don't break anything. All right, we're going to move into our public participation. So this is time we have set aside for the city council to listen to items that do not appear on the agenda. And we generally will not make any recommendations or discuss the issues. We ask that you limit it to 3 minutes. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on something not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close public participation, and we're going to move into our consent agenda. And so these are all items where all conditions or requirements that have been agreed to or met prior to the time they come before council for final action. They'll all be approved by one motion of the council. We're going to go ahead and open the consent agenda up to public comment. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on something on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll close that and bring it back to council. Does anybody have any questions, or do we have a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councillor Cry.
Yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes.
Councillor Linhart.
Yes.
Councillor Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. With that, we're going to move into our public hearings. So we've got one quasi judicial and two legislative hearings tonight. So our first one is our quasi judicial. It's for a special event liquor permit application. And so we're going to listen to staff is going to present on that.
Mayor, Deputy City Clerk, Deb Woods is on her way up. She's assisting with the election, but she is coming up right now to present that.
All right.
Sorry about the
a
delay.
minute or so, we'll take a slight break with that. With all those in here tonight or listening online. So normally we do the staff presents, then we'll have whoever's presenting the application, and then we open it up to public comment. So if there's anybody that wants to speak on our public hearings, they'll be able to do that tonight. So everybody can relax and wait just a few minutes here.
No walking tonight.
It's cold.
You got cold?
That's why we walk.
Yeah.
Yes. The world stops without you, Deb. You're important.
Yep.
No, we weren't, we just didn't know what to do without you.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am Deb Woods, Deputy City Clerk for the City of Fruita, and I'm giving staff's presentation on the special event liquor permit. I'm trying to catch my breath. For the museums of Western Colorado to serve alcoholic beverages at their After Dark event to be held at Dinosaur Journey this coming Saturday, April 9th from 6 to 10 p.m. The staff has, at the museum, has submitted with the city clerk's office the fees and all the necessary documentation that is required for the issuance of a special events liquor permit. And a diagram of the proposed licensed premises was included in your council packets. And it consists of only the inside of Dinosaur Journey. Museum staff will be checking IDs, and wristbands will be given to those who are 21 or over. Dinosaur Journey will be closed to anyone who has not purchased a ticket to attend the event. Bartenders from the Copper Club Brewing Company and museum staff will be monitoring to make sure no alcohol enters or leaves the area, and that participants have the required wristband before they will be served alcohol. Cruise Chief of Police Dave Kraus reviewed the museum's application and issued his statement that there is nothing that would prohibit the issuance of the license. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the city council approve the special event liquor permit application in Western Colorado, subject to the following conditions. The entrance and exit shall be monitored closely and continuously by event staff in order to prevent alcohol beverages from leaving or coming into the area. The licensee needs to be aware that they are solely responsible for control of the licensed premises in regards to alcohol possession, consumption, and adherence to state and municipal laws, and all other procedures presented by the museums of Western Colorado will be followed. So my recommended motion to you would be that you move to approve the special event liquor permit for the Museum of Western Colorado's After Dark event at Dinosaur Journey, subject to all conditions stated by staff. And that concludes my presentation. Libby Early from the Museum of Western Colorado is present in the audience. Libby, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Deb. All right, with that, we're going to open it up to public comment. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Any questions, comments, motion?
I move we approve the application for a special events liquor permit for the museums of Western Colorado to serve alcoholic beverages during the After Dark event on Saturday, April 9th, 2022 from 6 to 10 p.m. at Dinosaur Journey located at 550 Jurassic Court, subject to the conditions stated by staff in their presentation.
Second. Counselor Cry,
Yes.
Counselor Buck,
Yes.
Counselor Linhart,
Yes.
Counselor Harvey,
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, with that, we're going to move into our legislative hearings. The first one is ordinance 2022-13, a second reading. It's an ordinance amending section 17.09.060I of the Fruita Land Use Code concerning the limitation on issuances of short-term rental permits. We've got Dan Karras, our planning director, that's going to be presenting on this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Again, Dan Karras, Planning Director for the City of Fruita. For the record, I would like to formally enter my PowerPoint presentation into the record and just go over a couple iterations to this process, and then go through a few short slides, and then leave it for council's deliberation. As many are well aware, on the March 16th, 2021 public hearing, the council codified a new temporary restriction of 50 permits to be short-term rental permits to be licensed within a geographic boundary. Just for the sake of the audience and anyone listening, that geographic boundary is depicted in this slide, and essentially northbound on Pine Street and then westbound on Otley along the frontage of Highway 6 and 50. A couple caveats that were embedded into that new code adoption was to not count accessory dwelling units and owner-occupied units within that geographic boundary as a part of the numerical calculation. As sort of some subtext within the code codification, we set a prescriptive date of April 1st of 2022 for action to be taken. That was achieved by setting a first reading that called for the public hearing this evening on April 5th, 2022. Presently, just to give a little bit of kind of the lay of the land with regards to this landscape, we do have 50 permits that have been reached within that triangular area, and 6 of which are accessory dwelling units or owner occupied units. And then outside of that triangle, we have 14, kind of totaling at 70 active STR permits within the city boundaries, of course, 50 of those being within the triangle. We do have about 8 applications. I think we had 7, but we now have 8 that have submitted. So they're on the waiting list, so to speak, which is kind of a first come, first serve. But our first come, first serve, we've got a process in place where we actually accept those applications, and then they get submitted in the order in which we received them, just for everyone's edification. As a part of this, earlier this year, actually, let me back up. We didn't reach 50 active STR permits within that triangular region. The moment that new code was codified back in 2021, like we hovered in like the mid 30s for the longest time, and it's just sort of grown in that 250. So why that's important is that there have been people that have dropped off and chose to do long-term rent, or have chose to sell their units, or a myriad of different scenarios have taken place. So just want to make it known that it didn't just sort of go immediately to 50 when that code change was made. Earlier this year, I believe it was within the council reports and actions, or the manager's update, we received direction from the council to not continually place the STR conversation on workshops to try and achieve some consensus with a numerical value that was going to either change or stay the same, that is embedded within our code. We were directed to essentially propose a change to the code that either stayed the same, increased, decreased, or some of the kind of guts of the code language to change or be modified in some way. We have operated under the assertion all along that there really was no magic number that we were going to achieve, either unilateral consensus amongst people in the community or the council, but mostly just that there hasn't been a defined metric by which people place restrictions or lotteries or buffers between certain units. Like it kind of runs the gamut across the state with regards to communities that choose to regulate this or choose not to. So just want to make that clear. As a result, we stand behind the concept that there needs to be some sort of metric that is associated with STR licensing. One of the ones that the staff feels should be included into that sort of paradigm is the evaluation on a regular basis of long-term rental opportunities. We've commissioned obviously several initiatives, both with the comp plan code and then now with some of our housing initiatives, to figure out, where are the gaps within our housing stock and in both the ownership and in the rental space. We certainly feel that that rental is an important part of our community and is something that needs to have a great degree of attention brought to it. But with that said, it would be irresponsible to not present that we do have some multifamily projects that have been approved and are under construction presently that are going to provide long-term rental opportunities within this triangular area. We've calculated that at 37 units that are presently under construction and will likely be delivered to the market by the end of this year. There certainly has been more conversations than just the rental stock. There's been kind of community character and neighborhood association type assertions that have been made that have either arguments on both sides that kind of enhance the neighborhood or detract from it. But it's our belief that long-term rental is something that certainly seems to be affected by short-term rentals, but it's not the sole contributor. But that's the metric that we used to essentially propose an increase to that number, since there are going to be more units that are going to come to the marketplace. As an aside to that, that assertion, we also think that there needs to be kind of a constant reevaluation of that, because kind of increases in supply to the marketplace for housing variations or mixes certainly needs to be evaluated on a regular basis. But as it sits in the codification, like it gets rid of the evaluation at a date certain in the future. We were kind of operating under that year calendar previously, but if you, in your packets and certainly, you know, the audience has had an opportunity, and anybody listening or interested, that has been removed from the consideration for this ordinance, and we have placed the 65 number in there as what would be considered the licensing restriction going forward as a proposed conversation starter. Again, I went through kind of the applications that are accepted. They're not denied. Once we get like to the cap, like we accept those, and then they go in the order in which we received them. And this is just a depiction of some of the purpose statements that are in the comp plan that talk about the relationship to community and tourism, which was of interest the last time that we had this conversation about STRs, and the options available to council are listed there, and the staff recommendation is option number 1. So with that, that concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Dan. With that, we're going to open this up to public comment. So if there's anybody in the audience that'd like to speak on this item, we'd ask that you'd come up and state your name and address for the record, and then we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Make sure you speak into the mic, because we may have people online.
I'm Christy Driver with Visit Fruita Vacation Rentals. I'm also a business owner downtown, and I have I'm the chairman for the FTAC, Fruita Tourism Council. A couple of things that I wanted to mention is hopefully you received in your packet some information regarding affordability versus STRs. And that packet explains that the two, they're easy to link together, but they're not associated. With affordable housing has a lot more to do with the price of real estate as opposed to just STRs. But I'll let you read through that. That wasn't going to be my presentation today. I think from a point of FTAC group and tourism, people have worked very hard to support and encourage and bring tourism here to Fruita. And unless we are prepared to, or the city is planning on building hotels or additional campgrounds, people will go other places. They will go and they'll come here, but they'll stay in Grand Junction, and therefore we will lose our lodging and sales tax. I think that tourism is here to stay, and I hope that we can get past this limitation and come up with a better number than just an arbitrary 50 or 65. Right now, I don't believe that it's a problem. I think that we should take a look at where that stands each year and have a basis of a percentage of the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Mr. Mayor, we do have someone online that would also like to speak.
All right, well, we'll do that. We'll have, if you want to let them go now, we're going to let somebody online go, and we'll come back.
Sorry, Mike.
That's all right.
Yeah, so geez, I apologize if I mispronounced this first name. Tila, I'm unmuting you now if you want to make sure you're unmuted on your end.
Thank you. Did I do it right?
You did.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Tila Duhain. I am an owner of a property at 503 East Aspen. I think my husband's in the room. Hopefully he's waving at you right now. Um, But I do have a short-term rental license on that property, and I am calling in this evening just sort of to give my perspective as someone who has some experience with, we have a home in Boulder, Colorado. We do some short-term rentals out of my own home, and to see some of the growing pains that Boulder has had and how it relates to what Fruita is going through. I think you are not wrong to try to phase this in and regulate it and be cautious. I understand that, but I am calling tonight to encourage you to look at the successes that you've had so far with the short-term rental licensing and to be bold in embracing the tourism future and the tourism promise that I think Fruita has. I'm talking to you tonight as a tourist who became a community member. I'm here because my kid's at school, but my husband's there because he's there a lot. He has, invested, we both invested, but him in particular, a lot of time, in addition to the money, in addition to the people that we have employed as part of renovating the building, setting it up for a short-term rental, and just, eating and recreating there, sending our friends there to use the rental. It has opened our eyes to a corner of Colorado we did not realize existed. And I think a lot of people that we know from the Front Range over here think of Fruita and Grand Junction as basically flyover territory on their way to Moab. And Grand Junction, I might agree with, but Fruita is such a gem. We did not know about it until a few years ago. We have met the most delightful people. We have neighbors. We have people who text us and call us when they see something funny going on. We have a friend who brings over eggs when they know that we're in town there in Fruita. We have made such deep, deep connections with the community as a result of being invested with the community. And we would never have thought of buying a building and investing there and actually spending a good deal of time there had we not thought that a short-term rental possibility was there. I also want to point out that Fruita has, in the Grand Junction area, has sort of a bulbous sort of occasional need for excess housing for people who come in for special events. I am so excited that Mike's Headless Chicken Festival is going to happen again. But it's short little events like that that put a lot of pressure on the existing motels and hotels. And as someone who works in the transportation industry, I always urge cities to not build their networks to accommodate mass capacity, like the peak capacity, but you want to build flexibility into the systems that you have. And I think that the short-term rental licensing scheme that you're working on and hopefully expanding would encourage flexibility in the use of properties that people have available to them, so that we don't have to assume that we need 700 hotel rooms at any night, but with the short-term rentals sort of absorbing excess from our hotel.
Tila, I'm going to have you
Gotcha.
finish your conversation, your topic, because we hit the 3-minute mark. So
Gotcha.
Is there anything you want to finalize with your final comment?
I love the short-term rental flexibility as a way for the city to expand its capacity without building sort of hardwired, always only rental or hotel properties. It's a great way for a city to grow.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. With that, Mike, did you want to come up? Yep. So please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mike Driver. I'm a Fruita resident, 218 East Aspen. I'm a manager at Visit Fruita. My wife, Christy, is here with me. We're here as Fruita residents and as Fruita short-term rental owners, and we're in the property management in the short-term rental business. This is a business we have been in for, yikes, almost 30 years. Okay, we predate the internet. That's really, that's not a brag. I'm telling you how old I am. The point is, we've seen a lot of change. We've seen a lot of come and go. What Tia said and what Christy said, you've got the packet in your presentation tonight. I'm not going to restate that, but what I'm going to do is put a face to the thing that short-term rentals does is it provides a huge economic stimulus into Fruita. Last year, by all accounts, is about a $10 million revenue stream for that less than 2% of the homes that are short-term rentals in the community. Less than 2% of the homes brought in about a $10 million revenue stream. That's a quantifiable number that's in your packet. It also provided 25 to 35 full-time jobs. Now, I'm not talking about, these are jobs that people can afford to buy homes in this community at. So these are good jobs. And so when you are allowing short-term rentals and when you're encouraging short-term rentals, you're getting the economic impact, you're getting a job impact. It's a net positive for everybody. I'm going to end my comment with that. Thank you very much.
Mike. Is there anybody else in the audience? Do you have another one online?
I don't, but if there is anyone that is online that would like to provide a public comment at the time, you just have to raise your hand or dial *6 and we'll unmute you in the order we proceed. We do have several people online, so just wait.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience here that would like to speak on this item? All right. Let me see anybody here. Is there anybody online that would like to speak on this item? Once we close the public participation, it's closed.
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor.
All right. With that, we're going to close public comment on this item and bring it back to council. So we have information in our packet. We've heard from some of the community, and I know we've talked about this a few times. So I guess I'll just start out by I'll start with Matthew because he's not here. He called me today and wanted me to portray he doesn't think there should be a limit. And it's mainly due to personal property rights and that people have the right to use their property as they want. And I said, well, he's not here to vote. So, but I want to portray that to what you guys have. So with that, is there anybody that would like to start on this item?
Sure. I mean, I was in Matthew's camp. You own a home, you should be able to do what you want with it. But I feel like the zoning in residential is for residences, for long-term residences. When people switch and turn into a business, they're not being treated like a business by the taxing. They're still paying residential income tax or property taxes. They're not paying commercial property tax. So that's when that dawned on me, I sort of started changing my feeling. Like, you should be able to do what you want with your home, but once you start doing stuff that's kind of outside of the zoning that it's intended for, I feel like maybe it's okay for us to step in and ask questions, limit things, maybe even not allow certain uses. When we first started talking about this, we were talking about maybe increasing the fee. Did I forget that we finished that conversation, or is that still out there to be had? Because I feel like some of this could be answered with studies. Studies cost money. And I feel like that if we are going to go down this road, that maybe that a fee would help offset a study. Anyway, sorry. I'll let you.
Councilor Cry, that you're right. That did come up in some of the conversations with council, but we did not receive any direction to put forth any recommendation further than what we originally had recommended. So it's still ongoing, I would say.
Okay. I'm assuming owner occupied is defined somewhere.
That's the ADU.
No, that's essentially means it's somebody's primary residence, correct? And that's defined in our code or state. Okay. And what about, I know that we at least have one that's not a residence. It's a church. And I feel like I don't want to count that. You're not taking a residence off the market. That's what we're trying to, I guess, assess is the impact we're having on these homes that traditionally have been occupied by people who maybe don't have access to transportation, need to be closer to town. They don't make as much money. So I'm okay with not counting a church or a museum or something that gets converted from a non-house to a short-term rental. And we don't have any restrictions outside of the triangle, right? People can make as many Airbnb short-term rentals as they want outside of the triangle, as long as it's okay by their HOA.
Correct. If they go through the same permit process, they can be awarded a permit subject to whether it's approved or not in the HOA.
Okay. Those are all the questions and comments I have now.
All right, thank you, Ken. Want to go to the left?
I
Go ahead, Heather.
Well, I appreciated what was her name? Tila? I appreciate what she said about, the charm of Fruita and wanting to be here in Fruita and being in a neighborhood where people bring over eggs and you're talking on the porch and having a beer with your neighbors and stuff. And that's the very thing that's at risk with letting houses be turned over to short-term rentals, is that breakdown of the neighborhoods. And there are also further implications if there are 7 families that come out of a neighborhood because those houses get converted into short-term rentals, all those children aren't in our schools anymore. And if our schools don't have a certain population, then the school district has to start pulling what's called FTE or full-time equivalents. They start pulling positions out of schools. And so we end up losing staffing in our schools. So there's that neighborhood feel that I've talked about a lot. And that's probably my biggest thing. But there were some other things that I heard here tonight, like tourism is here to stay. Yeah, it is. It totally is. And that's much of the role of this council, is to try to figure out how to balance that tourism with our citizens. And our comp plan talks about citizens first, tourism second. And I feel like we're giving up our neighborhoods. We're not giving up our neighborhoods. We're giving up one particular neighborhood, because we're not talking about the whole community or a percentage of the whole community. We're talking about a percentage of this triangle. And yeah, I'm passionate about it because it's my triangle. I live here and my neighbors live here. And we've seen houses get bought up and turned into short-term rentals. And one of my friends has a short-term rental on both sides of her. Her little girl has no neighbor on the other side of the fence. There are people coming with families. That's great. The kid can play with the kid for, the tourist kids for a week or two, or day or two or whatever, but it's not the same as a neighborhood. So we're not talking about the whole community. We're talking about this triangle, because of the 70 that we have, 50 of them are in this triangle. And that's going to continue to be. And they don't have an HOA. And a lot of the people in this triangle don't have a second home that they could, so for me, it's about equity. A lot of the people who live in my neighborhood have inherited homes from their families, bought their first house here 20 years ago. I got my house here because it's what I could afford. I didn't choose that neighborhood. It's what I could afford. And a lot of people in my neighborhood live there for that same reason too. And that neighborhood is the most at risk from being bought up and turned over. But as I thought about this in the many weeks we've been having this discussion, here's my question. I'm so bummed that Matthew's not here tonight, because I was excited to have this conversation with him. I understand where he's coming from, and where probably some of you are coming from about property rights. An owner should be able to do what they want to with their property. But there was a previous example when Mr. Maves was trying to build a subdivision, and it was going to butt up to other people's homes. And those citizens came and they said, we don't want these tall townhouses overlooking our houses. That's our property rights. We thought we'd bought some acreage and we were going to have some scenes. And some of you guys voted on behalf of the citizens who lived in that neighborhood. You wanted some feathering to happen. You wanted some distancing to happen. You wanted to protect those citizens who are already there. That's a property right versus a property right thing. Should Maves be able to do whatever he wants with the property he's purchased? Should the citizens who live there have their protections put in place? This too is a property rights versus property rights thing. Should the people who buy houses and want to turn them into short-term rentals be able to do so? Or should the people who live in the neighborhood already, should their property rights be protected because they get to live in a neighborhood where someone can bring them eggs and their kids can play with other kids? It's the same thing. And so I'm confused, and I'm not being snarky here. I'm trying to understand why in one situation would you vote with the people who live in that community and you want to protect that community. And then in this situation, it doesn't seem that you want to vote with the people who are living in that community. I've talked with a lot of neighbors Karen and I did that door to door earlier, and I've talked with a lot of people in that triangle since. And there's a lot of concern about our neighborhood being turned into a tourist trap. So I've said all I can say. I'm curious as to the 65. I'm not saying absolutely no. I didn't even want 10. So now it's 65. I'd like to hear a little bit more about why you want me to be okay with 65. I understand we've got some new rentals to kind of offset that. I might be willing to compromise, but that's been my biggest question coming forward. And I really wanted to talk to Matthew about it. It's property rights versus property rights. So I want to vote with protecting the rights of the people who currently live here. And I understand many of the people who own short-term rentals also live here. That's fine, but they're not living in the neighborhood. They're renting it out to tourists who are not known by the neighbors. And I want to protect the neighborhoods. Those are my thoughts.
I want to comment on a couple things because I guess I disagree with the property rights. So when you talk about the dwell unit, I was all for dwell because I think owning property, you have the right to do that. One concern I have, and I'll have you answer that question, is we have 6 VRBOs in a neighborhood outside the triangle, and you voted on that one to approve that, even though neighbors were here saying, hey, we can't, we don't want to have another VRBO in there. And so that's where my concern is, that we've got this arbitrary number because we don't have any facts to say, oh, we have to limit it to 65. I think it should be unlimited until we have a reason or get to a number that is, what we would say. But we're okay to vote for 6 VRBOs in one neighborhood, one HOA neighborhood.
Yeah, but
but
that
we're not-
HOA allows them.
I
Right,
know
that
that.
was
Well,
the-
the downtown allows them. It's not,
Correct, but that HOA.
Okay, let me finish, Heather. Okay, we want to be respectful. And so that's my concern, is that just because the HOA says, oh yeah, that's okay, and some HOAs don't, that we're okay as a council because we voted on having that many in one neighborhood, even though neighbors were here saying, oh, we can't. We said, oh, well, the HOA allows it, so that's okay. Well, there isn't an HOA in the downtown to say, no, you can't. So in the same respect, they are allowed in that. And so it's up to the person that owns that property and how they want to use that. And I know we've heard from people that, they've inherited houses and in the downtown, and now we're selling them, hey, you've inherited that, you can't, rent that. So that would be my comment. Go ahead. I'll let you reply to that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I was just taking down notes with my brain spinning. I don't want to miss anything. But I voted yes on that one because there is an HOA in place in that neighborhood. And I think it's important that citizens know how policies and HOAs work. I mean, a lot of us just go about our life never really knowing about how government or policy works. Myself included, I've learned so much in the last 2 years, right? So if you're living in an HOA and it allows short-term rentals and you don't want that to be allowed, then as a citizen, you need to be talking to your neighbors and you need to be going to your HOA and trying to change the policies of the HOA. I didn't feel like as council, that was our purview to say what an HOA can do or what it can't do. So I voted yes, not because I was all for it, because there was a mechanism in place for the citizens in that neighborhood to take care of that problem if they gathered together and collectively organized. There is no such entity to protect the triangle. None. The only mechanism these people have is knowing that I live in their neighborhood and talking to me and me talking to you guys. And Matthew's suggestion that the people in the triangle can just form their own HOA, that's just not logic. That's not going to happen. So there's no mechanism to protect them. And when I feel like, I think that is the role of government. I'm not into government intervening in all situations, but when there's a population of people who aren't being protected, I think that is the role of government.
Can I address that? Because I was one of those that also had issues with the PUD. The difference with dwell is it was a zone change. It was a PUD. It's not the same. If it was straight up community residential, I wouldn't have said a word, but they were asking to change the rules. The rules where you live in the triangle, you can have a short-term rental if you want it. Your neighbor can have a short-term. It's an equal playing field. And as much as you may not think it is, a lot of people like living in the triangle because there isn't an HOA. That's a lot of that appeal, is that there isn't a governing body telling you what you can and can't have in your yard and what color to paint your house.
And I think that that's valid. I mean, I didn't know what an HOA was until I bought the house that I could afford. And I think a lot of people are in that boat too. So, but you're right. Some people choose to live there because of that.
So I just wanted to address that one. So go ahead.
No, it's good.
Karen, did you want to go?
Sure. I got to say that, I mean, my thing from the beginning has been to put our community members first. And so for me, that was really important, knowing that people have short-term rentals on either side of them and losing that community feel downtown. That was a big thing for me. And I have to say that tourism has been here for a long time and it continues to grow. I mean, there's got to be a point where we want to manage that and not let it take over. So I think we've always appreciated that and we still do. And so, and I think all the people that do the short-term rentals, that I respect what you do, and you've put out a good product, and there's nothing that I can say that, against that. But what I really feel my obligation is, even though we have, which is great, the apartments coming in, great, but that still doesn't cover the gap that we have on people that want to buy a home. So as we've been listening to these, the data from our people doing these the study, that is a big piece. People want to buy a place here and they can't do it. And I mean, we can't stop people from coming into town with cash and buying up stuff. I mean, there's really no way to do that. But if we can somehow protect that triangle piece, because that really is where most of the affordable housing is, then I think we owe that to our community members. The outside piece, yeah, that's kind of managed by your HOA. So, we hear from people all the time, we don't want to lose this community feel, right? Don't Moab Fruita. Don't, Vail has a whatever 40% of short-term rentals. I don't want that here. And I don't think anybody does. We don't want to be compared to those other areas. So that's where I stand. I feel like it's important to reevaluate every year. That is a big piece. I would be curious, because I do have a couple places by me, what the percentage of vacancy is. That would be something I'd be curious about. But so my stand is, I don't support increasing, but I'm one of the group, so that's where I'm at.
Kyle?
Well, this conversation, it has been going on for a long time. I mean, I know that the last time we were sitting in the same position where there are people waiting for election results, short-term rentals was like one of the top of the list, things that people were talking about. And I don't think the conversation has gotten easier. I think it's something that everybody's trying to figure out. I think it's across the state, it's across the country. I mean, you can find, 500 YouTube videos about it, half in support, half against. I mean, there's no easy answer. I've heard a lot of, interesting comments about it that I think are totally relevant. I have a couple questions. One would be, where are we at with the process right now? Is it administrative? I can't remember if we changed it. So I think that is a piece to the puzzle that I think needs to, I know that we moved it in that direction, and I guess I have some heartburn over that at this point. I think, especially if we're going to be looking at changing the number in that triangle, the people of those neighborhoods should have an opportunity to come and comment in a public hearing, one way or the other. And I may have been somebody that suggested it be, streamlined and done administratively. And if that's the case, sometimes you have to change your mind, and that's okay. So that would be one thing I'd be interested in. I think Ken's comment about, the commercial versus residential, I think that's probably one of the better arguments for taking a closer look at it. And I do know that we've talked at length about fee, having some sort of fee schedule on that. I think that needs to be addressed. And I thought we had, but I mean, we've talked about it so many times, I guess we never solidified anything. I've talked about a guy named Martin Carcasson before. Shannon, I know he knows who I'm talking about, and I think Mike does. He's a gentleman that runs a program called the Center for Deliberative Democracy. And he talks about wicked problems. And I don't think this is like it's not wicked in the wicked sense, the sense that we might think of like scary or something, but he talks about wicked problems or sort of problems where you get deep into the weeds and it's hard to sort of figure out how to move forward in those situations. And what he advocates for is a really deliberative process where you include, everybody in the community, and that would be the stakeholders as well as the people that live in the neighborhoods and the staff. And rather than having us sit up here and you guys all sit down there, and people get 3 minutes and then we move on and that's it. That's all you get to say. There's more of a conversation. You kind of workshop it as a community. And I would love nothing more than to see this as an opportunity to utilize that type of process where we get together and we talk about this as a community rather than 5 or 6 people making a decision up here on something that affects so many. And I know that's not an easy thing to do. I know, we went through the planning for the entire community over the past couple of years, but I think this one particular issue deserves some sort of a dialogue beyond this. And I don't know if that's something that we can do. And I know my time's limited here, so I'm not going to have much of a say in it beyond tonight.
Well, you're gonna have so much time. You could organize it.
In my free time now, yeah. I mean, I would be happy to be there and as a member of the community, but that's kind of where I stand with it. I had brought this idea up at a workshop before, and I still feel like I would feel more comfortable moving forward on it if there was more of a community discussion. The discussion we're having isn't representative of everybody's thoughts. So I don't know if that's a possibility, but Lori's given me
No, I think it is representative of everybody's thoughts. I think you have some people that want zero limit and some people that don't want any. And I think that's the hard part is where is that compromise? And that's what I want to see a compromise on this. And we haven't been able to do that because I'm with Matthew, like, let it go. But I recognize that probably isn't the best. If I've got 5 people saying or 4 people saying, you might be off base, I'm probably off base. I'll admit that. So what is that number, right?
I
And
think that's the hard part is like what, Joe was talking about the metric. how do we even know what the metric should be?
I don't know, but like a little bit of perspective on this, like what, did we say there's 1,000 homes in that triangle? Is that the number? 1,000 homes? What's the number in the triangle?
About 1,300
1,300.
in the
We're
triangle.
talking 50. I mean, that's nothing. And then we're maybe talking about going up to 65. That's nothing in that area. I feel like we've gone so off our rockers about digging our heels in one way or the other that we can't even come to some rational number at this point. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry to interrupt you, Kyle.
No, I mean, I think I needed to be interrupted, so. I don't know what else I have to say about it. I would love to see us use this as an opportunity to have a conversation beyond this evening. And I know that's maybe not popular, but, and I think we're gonna have, regardless of how things turn out, there's gonna be 3 new people on council with maybe 3 new sets of ideas. And we've all been talking about it for years now. So I just think there'd be value. And I know that Dan's kind of giving me a look like, really, you're gonna kick this, you want to kick this can down the road, but I think that's the wise thing to do. I don't think it's the most, it's not the easiest, it's not the cleanest, but I think that would be the best thing, would be to continue talking about it and figure some of these things out. Like, if it's being used for commercially, nobody's living there full time, then should it be subject to commercial, the same hoops that you have to jump through?
And I want to address that quickly. You want to address his question first?
Sure, I can, whenever you'd like. I have a few comments to the comments that have
Well, I
been
want to
made.
comment on this one because they're talking about commercial. And what I find, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but if you look at Best Slope Coffee, Chestnut Realty, you've got the insurance company, you got 3 businesses that have taken residential houses off the market. And we look at the downtown mixed use. How big of an area would you say that is, Dan? Downtown mixed use, where we can actually have a business buy a house and turn it into a straight 100% business. So we're worried about a rental that has people coming in from out of the area to enjoy our community as a family, but yet we're not concerned about
They're all
these
being
houses
taxed
being.
commercially, though.
Yeah, it's.
I know that they're deep.
Businesses.
But I'm saying is the rationale I've been hearing tonight is that we don't want to lose this community because we have neighbors and we've got a VRBO on each side. Well, that VRBO could be a hair salon.
But those are just
Could-
certain houses, right? There's only a
It's a-
couple of those.
Well,
that-
No, there's an area downtown.
I think what the mayor's saying is the downtown zone, it doesn't encompass the whole triangle, but there's a portion of that all those houses can be turned into businesses at any point in time. They're zoned for that
Correct.
change.
So that, I mean, that's
Not
what
the
I'm
whole
saying, is we're not
triangle,
worried-
but there's-
It's the same thing as having outside the triangle. We don't care about what those are. But then on an inner part of the triangle, those could be sold to a business, which a business normally will pay more for that because the use and everything is more. And yes, they're paying the tax on it, but from what I'm hearing tonight is we're worried about the community, but the land use right for those in that downtown mixed use could be purchased as a business. And you could have somebody with their daughter out there playing in their yard and it's a business right next door on this side and it's a business on this side because we've
Yeah,
seen
but that's a
that.
place where I'm gonna go get my hair cut because they're a local hairstylist, or that's a place I'm gonna go have
No,
Lori.
but that
be my
doesn't change
realtor.
the argument that you were saying, Heather, on that side of it.
But
So
we've zoned it for that. Like,
Yeah.
that's already been like thought about and done with. I don't think anybody anticipated that a house would be turned into a hotel in a residential area. We allow certain uses in a residential area, church, museum. There's a list, but
right, I'm saying I'm hearing this change and I appreciate what Lori said about compromise because that was one thing I want to talk about tonight because I know at our past meetings, we've had counselors that say, hey, nope, this is the number, even though we're kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard saying, okay, I don't know what it should be. And there's no compromise. And that's one thing I appreciated about this group is that we've always been able to compromise, except for when it comes to short-term rentals. And
Okay, so what number do you think is a compromise?
me personally, I think we should be in the 70 to 75 range. I mean, I think when, like what Lori's saying, there's 1,300 homes in this area. We're talking about, Karen said, oh, it's 40% in Vale. we're talking about less than 5% right now in the downtown area.
What I said, I don't want to be compared to Vail.
No, I don't
I
either.
don't-
I agree with
don't
that.
care
But
if
what
they-
I'm saying is that when you talk about a percentage, that's a huge gap. You know, I'd like to say, let's set some, you know, a number that we can reevaluate on a yearly basis and see what happens. Dan even said that they've had people that have dropped out and come back. There may be, we're in a spot with our tourism that, you know, it hovers around the 65 to 70 mark all the time and it never hits a 75, you know, because we don't know. We're setting a number and then what that's doing is saying, okay, people have to go onto a waiting list when we don't know if we're going to get new people in that downtown area.
Setting a high number is just as much throwing a dart at a board as setting a low number.
I agree with that.
So if you're thinking 70 to 75 and
See, I'm in the camp, I wouldn't set a number. I would be in the camp to say, okay, let's monitor it until it hits a point where we think that, you know, it is, you know, I'm kind of in Lori and Matthews thing.
right,
So that's where I'm coming from is that
Mm.
I don't think we're at a point where it's at a point where we need to be scared to put such a tight number on it until we know more metrics or we have the chance to do a bigger study or like Kyle's idea, we put a higher number on it until we get more community feedback. And I know Mike may be able to answer this. I think the question on the community input when we were doing our master plan was about a split on rentals. So, I mean, I think we may see the same thing, 50% for, 50% against, but I think if we give a higher number, it would allow us to do some more community outreach over the next year to
We
find out.
Specifically need to engage the people that live
In
in
the triangle.
triangle though.
Yeah.
I just see, okay, I'll, yeah. But I think we need to engage. So this is where I have heartburn on this is that if you live in the triangle, I understand that's your backyard and that's where you want to protect. But for those of us that live outside that, and my HOA doesn't have restrictions on VRBOs, you can rent it. There's lots of HOA neighborhoods that don't have a restriction on it. So for us to say, oh, we're only going to focus on that downtown core to ask about VRBOs. I think
That's the
wrong.
market. The market's focusing on the downtown core. And I think if,
Wait,
I-
okay, I'm going to ask, let me finish.
You're not
This is going to be respectful. When somebody's talking, we're going to listen.
well,
and then
you've
you'll have
been
your chance.
interrupting as well. So
Well,
let's all take a deep breath.
so I guess my concern is that we look at the whole community and yeah, we can section out those, but it's not going to be just, oh, we're only going to hear about the downtown core.
But as long as
Yeah, wait,
we're putting as long as we're putting a number on the downtown triangle, that's where our focus has to be. Those are the people that we need to talk to. And when Heather and I went out and went door to door, that was what we were hoping to get input from the people that live there. I mean, for us to be making decisions when we don't live there, we don't live it. I would go with Kyle's suggestion. We need to hear from them.
It can.
Sorry, Ken.
no, you're all right. There's something desirable about the downtown triangle. People are focusing on that when they buy these. I don't know if it's because it's affordable to get into that or if that's where the tourists want to be. But it does take those houses out from the people who need them. The workers that don't drive, they can't go in. And I'm wondering if we do somehow limit the amount that's in that triangle, if it will make your HOA and other HOAs more of an option. It will, people who are building HO or short-term rentals will consider outside of the triangle more and expand out and not put as much pressure on the triangle. I wonder if we're not shutting down the short-term rental market by capping, if we're just sort of getting them to spread out a little bit. That's my thought.
And if you remember when this kind of started, somehow we were at a number of like, I want to say, I don't know why, and I could be wrong, it's been a while, but 200 and we were going to charge like $1,000. So what if we were using like 100 citywide, just trying to hit 100 short-term rentals citywide and charging $1,000? That is one down payment assistance right there, 100 grand every year. You'll be adding to our, if you could take that problem or opportunity and put that money toward solving a problem we're already working on. That's real money, like especially now that we have more of a plan involved, because 2 years ago we didn't have this. But 100 grand, if we could raise that every year with short-term rentals, that's amazing. Just
Yeah, I'm not opposed to raising the fee at all.
I think it's great. I feel like we'd have to have some data, a study to back it up to make it a legal fee, to justify why we're charging. that
it's a
fee.
permit. Can't we just do it?
We already have a.
Just do
permit fee for
Yeah,
it. We just raised that fee.
exactly. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm all for making the fee much more. You know, as I've done a lot of research and a lot of reading too, the communities where it's gotten out of control, their common advice has always been get ahead of this and go slow before it gets ahead of you. And so that's why I am in favor of a number. And that's an interesting thing. If it's capped within the triangle and there are HOAs outside, will some of them spread out to the other? I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting. So is 65 a compromisable number? I mean, I know I'm a 0, you're at 0 on the opposite end. Is 65 a number we can vote on tonight?
That's the question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mike's got a question.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, just two things, Mayor, members of council. One, Matthew Bremen has joined virtually. And if you all, because he's not here and wasn't at the very beginning, it is a legislative matter. You could, if you are okay with it and want to allow him to participate, he is available to participate. That's the first thing. And then I do have a number of comments to respond to comments that have been made that could be helpful. Maybe not.
All right, well, let's go with the comments first, and then we'll address the Matthew.
Sorry to be the problem child.
Yeah.
Keep listening though, Matthew.
Okay, so just a couple things. And for those online, my name is Mike Bennett, the city manager. Kyle's Martine and his Wicked Problems process, I full-heartedly support in many ways. I think it's a great opportunity for certain aspects. I don't think you can do it for every decision, obviously. I don't think Kyle was saying that either, but you're suggesting this might be a good opportunity for that. I went back to the council handbook and a quote that's been in there even that precedes me here. And I think this is a good, with all due respect, a good opportunity to just reiterate it because I think we're at this point. And this is by Dr. John Nalbandian, who's KU professor, just never mind.
No reaction.
He said, experienced elected, and he's a thought leader in public policy throughout the country for many years and in this field of local government. And he said, experienced elected officials understand that public policymaking is not about discovering right answers. It is more accurately described as forging alliances and compromises among advocates of different, often conflicting values with the goal of building and maintaining a sense of community. He goes on to address, so I'm not reading quotes to you, that often when you get to a point where the representation of a community is very split and even split on a city council, that the tendency is to continue asking for additional information. In this particular subject, we've had some of the experts come and any of the best practices suggest much higher percentages than we are at, right? So we can choose to be much lower, which we have done. What I mean by that is 10% or more of your housing, get ahead of it. Like you were saying, Heather, that's get ahead of it so you don't go beyond 10% in these higher numbers. I think in your discussions, there's definitely, and decisions to this point have been votes to keep it far below 10%. So I'm not saying 10% is the right number, but I think we've acknowledged that the fact there is no magic number. We can continue to analyze all we want, and there's going to be a different opinion on what that percentage is and what that number is. 50 was not based on any science. 50 was based on we're around 30 something, that was what 4 people decided to vote on for. And I think I think it shows that the council has been split. There are some that don't see the need of any, limit, and then some that want to see it, 50 or less, or somewhere in that ballpark. I can't speak to that. I think during our comp plan, while you can always go back and analyze, do we spend much more time getting more feedback? This was one of the boards at every piece of that year-long process, and it stayed pretty even on both sides with the dots, whether it was at the community center for multiple weeks, whether it was online, whether it was at all the open houses, over 40 of those, the sessions that we had, over 4,000 people. I think just in the viewpoints of the current council, I think it's fairly representative of the community. I think you have that. I think we're just at a juncture where it's a tough decision. I think we've had questions about why now, right before an election. And I think all of us would acknowledge that when you set in motion the new permit process, we were looking at renewals would happen at the end of the year. We'd have some of the data of how that shook out. We did see a number of conditional use permits, the previous process, drop off. And even since we implemented the process, like Dan mentioned, many units have sold or so there's been various changes up and down. I think the date was set for April. Honestly, I don't remember the election coming up ever in that discussion. It was more about, I think we'll need the data, but it'll, maybe by the end of January, well, we might need time because depending on calculating it, so maybe, and then it was just like, why not April? I know that hasn't come up here, but it's come up definitely in the public. So I just want to reiterate, there's no magic number. We were given direction to make a recommendation based on what we had. We looked at the fact that we have a split council on both ends of the spectrum. We had a vote for 50 at one point in time, and we're looking at a number of units being brought on into that area that helps that. And we don't see, our staff recommendation is we don't see any further harm in the difference between 50 and 65. Now, whether that's 70, we don't have, there's no magic data. I wish we did. We often like to deliver golden plates of perfect data for you to make a decision on, and we can't with this one. I just admit it. So the other is property tax for commercial and for residential and commercial. There definitely is a difference there, but that's a state issue. That's not, we can't change the property tax. My understanding through our questions legally, but that is a discussion that's happening at the state level. And that's something, if you feel passionately about one way or another, that's where to advocate or consider as a group advocating one way or another for.
If Matt Soper's out there listening, respond to my email, please.
Yeah. There are linkage fees. We've discussed those. We could not make that decision tonight. That would need to be something that we, come to some discussion, post a first reading and those type, or, go through the normal process for that. We have a permit fee. You can also add linkage fees that could add additional cost in the future. I think even some of our proponents of short-term rentals in the past have recommended some, a slightly increased fee, if I remember right. Don't want to speak for them, but and it's probably not an open number, but just the consideration of different ways of tackling this. So I think I'm trying to think about the different things that were brought up. Let's see. I think I mentioned it, but in our analysis of what we have, and again, not having a magic number, but looking at what's changed since we implemented it, the majority of houses, as Karen referred to from the studies we have, are not affordable currently. That's the gap we're addressing in a different way. I think, but the units that Dan was referring to are coming in likely in that attainable area of a cost price that we don't have right now. So looking within that possible 120%. Again, we can never know for sure where that's going. And then there are other developments in the early stages of process to bring more of those, more units than the 37 in the future. So there was a question about why 65. I think compromise in this scenario, if it's 0 or no limit and we're at 50, we're just recommending, the change in 15, which we don't see affecting what has already been affected due to adding those units on. And I don't know if there's anything, okay. So that's what I just wanted to add, and we're happy to try and answer any other questions, and wanted to make sure you were aware of Matthew. And of course, you might want to make a motion of allowing him to come into that, but you can, as a legislative matter, it's not a quasi judicial that was started and wasn't here.
So Matthew missed the initial conversation. So do you guys want to allow him to come in? Because he's got the right to vote. If we want him to allow him to have the right to vote. And
Yeah, I move we allow Matthew in the conversation. And I'm really bummed you're not here because I was looking forward to the debate.
Second.
Counselor Buck.
Yes.
Counselor Linhart.
Yes.
Counselor Harvey.
Yes.
Counselor Cry.
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien.
Yes.
all right, Matthew, you've got the floor. Did you want to add anything? I don't know what all you caught in, how long you've been in the conversation or listening.
I've been in the conversation for about 10 minutes.
Oh, so you missed all the
I
good
got to
stuff.
hear- I unfortunately missed a bunch of it. So I do apologize. Joel, I did hear you kind of state my position on the matter. So thank you very much. I know we're not at 10% or anywhere close at it to that percentage. But did we have a percentage that was mentioned that I missed?
No, the number on the language is 65.
Which would be probably around 5.5% would be my rough guess. To 6%, maybe, of the downtown only, not of the whole. What's the
Oh, English
math?
teacher,
quick?
don't look at me.
It's less, it's.
I think it's under 5% of the triangle area.
5. All right, Matthew.
That was my only question. So thank you.
All right, is there any other questions or comments after Mike added something?
Yeah, I just like to make a comment with what Ken said about the, like the special, the buildings, be it a church or museum or something that has, that's, I mean, you were more eloquent about it, but that should be maybe treated differently if we have a different category, that, it seems to be, that would be rented differently than someone's not going to go by the church, like you said. It's not taking a house off the.
Well, it is taking the house off the market, but the difference is that it's a business owner who's here that I can go and business with them as opposed to tourists on the other side of the fence from me.
Or I'm talking about
the church that turned into, oh, sorry.
But I agree with, that mixed use piece. So that maybe maybe it's not tonight, but the future council would look at something like that. And also the reevaluate, because if we do 65, we reevaluate and or you guys reevaluate and it's stable, then, you just, go from there.
All right, so the real question is, can we compromise and what is that number? Is it the 65 that staff is presenting? Is everybody comfortable with that? That would be my first question. Or not everybody's comfortable, but are they willing to compromise to that number?
Well, do we make a motion and take a vote, or are you taking an informal vote?
I'm taking an informal.
I'll just make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
I move to adopt ordinance 2022-13, second reading, and ordinance amending section 17.09.060I of the Fruita Land Use Code concerning a limitation on the issuance of short-term rental permits as proposed.
Do we have a second?
Dan, real quick. I know that you kind of addressed this and I can't remember what you said, but in terms of reevaluating that number at a, that originally we were gonna have like a sort of a date that we set. What, can you just clarify? I was looking at the,
Well, and my question was more specifically, it's not in the actual language. So would that be something that staff would annually bring up to council?
That was my, that was what I meant by that. I wasn't saying that we would codify like, by January 1 of 2023, that it will automatically be reevaluated.
But should that be part of the proposal
The motion you're
or
talking.
the motion? Yeah, but
Well,
on
Well,
yearly.
I wasn't suggesting that. And I don't, parliamentary procedure, we have a motion on the floor.
Right. We have a motion. If we don't have a second, then the motion dies.
Awesome compromise.
Yeah.
No, hang on. I'm.
I think there's just
breath.
questions to.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was trying to do before we had a formal motion, is to make sure we're all
I'll
heard what we
second
need to
it.
hear.
No, I'll second it.
so real quick, if I understand, are we tying that to the renewal process or the calendar year, or just for us to bring it up?
I guess that's what I was trying to clarify, was just, I don't see it in the actual ordinance, so I just wondered if we're going to set some sort of parameters on that or some expectation moving forward.
I think one thing to note that's already in there, that's not what you're saying, that maybe it could be tied to, is the fact that there's an annual renewal process, right? So at the same time each year, I think December 1st codified in there that permit holders have to go through to renew. So I would imagine if you want to add to if you add to the staff reports back on that, which we do anyway, but that would be part of the
I
review.
guess I think what I'm hearing is, once we hit the 65, there'll be some more applications and it'll be discussed again at that point.
No, the applications will go into the queue.
But I think we'll have this conversation again. If we raise it 65, this conversation will happen again as soon as we get to 65.
And
That's not in the language.
No, it just will.
Probably.
No, it doesn't have to, though.
again, remember, this isn't being driven by because there's applications in the queue. There's been many applications in the queue that have already been approved because others fall off. It's not a one time a year thing. So it's not like, oh, we reached 65, we have more in the queue. What I'm saying is there's an annual renewal process that we go through to know where we're at and report back to council. And I mean, that's just a logical time to review kind of where we're at and also what's been added in that area. So that's all I'm referring to, not trying to give language for the discussion.
Does anybody agree that Stephen's house shouldn't be considered a house? That is that the church shouldn't be counted as towards a cap if we were to keep one or set one?
I'm uncomfortable with trying to splice things out that specifically, because in theory, anybody could have purchased that building and converted it into a home.
If it's a home and somebody converts it to a short-term rental, then it's a home, but yeah. Okay, just curious if anybody's interested in.
Is there any more discussion? I know we had a motion and Heather seconded it. So
So the question is, do we need to say in the language that there needs to be an evaluation of the number yearly or whatever? I mean,
Does
I
that
think,
need to be codified?
no,
or
that's
is
what
that-
I think, isn't that what we're asking?
no, but we
Does
do
that
that all
need
the
to
time.
be-
We have staff bring us stuff on an annual basis that we don't codify in a meeting.
And I was
Okay,
just,
okay.
and I was just unclear as to whether that was, I know that you addressed that specifically when you, in your presentation, and so I just wasn't quite sure what the plan was with that. And I think if we feel, passionately about saying, the first of the year when we look at this and address it then.
So
just so we're clear, like two paths, right? Like we evaluate it as a policy related conversation annually, or it triggers the ordinance going back before council. And so those are two different paths. What I was presenting on is that it would be evaluated annually as a part of an update or an administrative update. It wouldn't constitute, bring in ordinance before the council each year.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in the spirit of compromise, I'm not for a cap at all, realizing that may not be the appetite of most council. If we are going to set an appetite, I would be more comfortable with saying January 1 of 2023 or whatever date that this policy gets renewed or gets reviewed and has to be renewed. So that discussion can continue when we hit a higher limit and we can start talking about percentages and other impacts, since we will have been over a year into it.
But I don't know that needs to be codified in the language. I think that's just an expectation we set forth for staff to evaluate and bring us information.
The conversation is not going away, I
The
think.
conversation is not going
I
away.
think if what Matthew's saying, though, if it's codified, then you're forced to make an evaluation again.
That's
I guess.
correct.
I just don't know if I want to, we're not all going to agree, and I don't think even new council is going to agree on, I think we're a good representation of our community. So
I'll have this conversation any old time, every year, forever. Not that I'm going to be on council forever. I feel like it encumbers the language to codify it. I trust our staff to be checking the numbers and bringing things up. But that's my opinion.
We've been talking about affordable housing and trying to figure out a way to get people into houses. And I feel like approving an increase, whether it's 15, it hurts. I'm willing to do it, but I think we need to seriously consider what that fee should be and what it might go to. That's something I don't think that conversation should stop.
That isn't part of the motion.
Right.
We have a
That's
motion
not part of the
on
motion.
Floor.
So we do have a motion and we have a second, unless we want to change that and drop the motion, but I don't hear that or see that. So you want to poll the council?
Councilor Harvey.
Seriously, this is the way you guys send me out to pasture?
I had them pre-written, I swear. So not
I'm
everyone.
on the
went
back
through.
40.
Yes. Councilor Buck. Councilor Linhart.
Yes,
Councilor
in the spirit of compromise.
Councilor O'Brien.
In the spirit of compromise, yes, but I expect a report.
Councilor Cry
Yes.
and Councilor Bremen.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1, Mr. Mayor.
That wasn't very compromising, Matthew.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, we're going to move into our second legislative hearing. It's ordinance 2022-12, a second reading amending section 1.28.020A of the Fruita Municipal Code. And we've got our city manager, Mike Bennett, presenting on this one.
All right, Mayor and members of council, so as to not try and pull our city clerk up from elections, as that didn't go well
Well, you
earlier.
guys don't mind if she comes up, do you? Is that-
Hey.
I'm going to take a stab at presenting this, although I was not planning it. But this is for ordinance 2022-12. It's a second reading. As you're aware, the first reading was approved with council on, I believe, March 1st. And it was properly noticed as we typically do for these public hearings. This was created because of a state statute change related to our our Fruita Municipal Code concerning the maximum penalty for violations of the Fruita Municipal Code. And council had a discussion at a previous meeting leading up to setting the first reading, and which set the hearing tonight, and directed staff to reach out to Judge Robinson, our municipal court judge, in relation to his viewpoints, to further clarify his viewpoints on the change. So for the record, the state statute increased the maximum penalties that a municipal judge or a municipality can assess for various violations, and also requires that we change our and that's not a requirement that we change it, but it gives us the opportunity to evaluate and change it. What we do have to change is that the state law changed from we can no longer have in our municipal code on up to a year. It has to actually state 364 days. So that's a change we just need to make. Not necessarily much discussion about that. So Judge Robinson was asked how he considers what he considers when he is assessing penalties for violations of the municipal code. And in the packet, I'm not sure if you want me to read these to you or, okay, I'm getting the nod. So essentially there, he's listed that out, what he considers. I think just to summarize what that is, his input was, you can't always only consider what we have assessed for. So there was a lot of discussion last time on here's the types of things that we typically see. He's more worried about the types of things we could see. And he's also likes to utilize, there can be more flexibility with a higher fee that he assesses, and then he reduces that fee based on certain things that the person can do. So, hey, you're assessed $2,000, but it will only be, I'm just making this up, but $200 if you provide X amount of community service or if you do this form of restitution. So it's his recommendation. I feel kind of funny making that on his behalf, but I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you may have after the public hearing.
Thank you, Mike. Yep, we're going to go ahead and open this up to public comment. So if there's anybody either online or in person here that would like to speak on this item, now is the time to do so. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on this item? Anybody online?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor.
All right, with that, we're going to close public comment and bring it back to council. Are there any questions for Mike relating to this?
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance 2022-12, amending section 1.28.020A of the Fruita Municipal Code concerning general penalties for violations of the Fruita Municipal Code.
Second.
Counselor Bremen,
Yes.
Counselor Buck,
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien,
Yes.
Counselor Lindhart,
Yes.
Counselor Cry,
Yes.
and Counselor Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. We're going to move into city manager's report.
I do not have any updates tonight, Mayor and members of council.
At least not at this time.
Not at this
Hour
time.
or so you might. All right, with that, we're going to move into our council reports and actions. Our first item is we were requested, and I brought before council at our workshop that the LDS Church would like a letter of support considering the reconstruction of the church. Everybody should have received a draft letter. And so is there any discussion on that? Does anybody have any concerns? Go ahead, Karen.
I just have an issue with the church piece of it. And, you know, we've seen to be pretty critical on letters of support and stuff. So that's just where I'm at. I don't think it's something that council should do.
Anybody?
I'm in agreement on that.
I sort of feel like I may be against it if this was a new organization and we would be writing a letter. It would feel kind of weird to me that we would do that. But this, to me, it's an institution. It's so many people in our community. That's the home where they go to worship, and it's existed. And I I mean, I doubt that any of us don't want it to be rebuilt. So or the community. So I mean, I feel like it's different than us advocating for a religion or something. We just would like, our people to be able to continue their lives worshiping, shopping, doing the things that they like to do. And I support us advocating for that.
Well put, I agree. And I think the letter's written pretty basically. It just says that exactly that sentiment, not those words, but that sentiment. I think you guys did a good job in keeping it. This has been a part of our community. A lot of people have benefited from it. And, before we had a rec center or, organized rec program, I mean, this is where people got their structure as youth, whether it's Catholic church or the Methodist church or the Mormon church, like this is where all of those things happened. And so I'm glad to support it.
I don't disagree with all those things. Saying.
You just like a
but
clean separation.
I
guess my concern is take religion and church out of it. If it was another building that had been in our community, no matter who owned it, would we write a letter of support? Because I mean, that's kind of how we have to judge it is, okay, it's not a church, it's a building that served our community. So if it's a building that served our community, it doesn't matter what's associated with it. That's where my sentiment is on this, is that we'd have no problem writing a letter of support if another building in the community had burned down. And
this is what we're focused on. I wouldn't bring any other comparisons in. This is it.
all right, so is there any other discussion on this? Or do we have a motion?
I respect everybody's opinion on it. I mean, I get where everybody's at.
So I need a motion I need to know if we're
What's the motion?
agreement to,
I move we direct Joel Kincaid to sign this letter to the Church of Latter-day Saints, asking them to reconstruct the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Fruita.
Second.
Councilor O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilor Cry,
Yes.
Councilor Harvey,
Yes.
Councilor Lenhart,
No.
Councilor Buck, Councilor Bremen.
No.
Motion passes 4-2, Mr. Mayor.
all right, thank you. With that, we're going to move into our council reports. We're going to go ahead and start. Which side do I want to start? Let's start with Matthew. You have anything to report?
No, I do not, Mr. Mayor.
All right, let's put Kyle on the hot seat again. He likes to be one of the first ones.
I don't have anything to report.
All right, Karen,
No.
Lori,
No.
Ken,
I'd love to be different, but I'm not.
Heather.
Parks and Rec met last night. They have been trying for some grants, for a GOCO grant for Reed Park. They said if it was the Olympics, they would have missed it by like 1/100 of points, that math thing. They were really, really close. So they're going to apply again in September. But it's been on, like, Reed Park updates have been on the agenda for many, many years. And so at some point we just want to figure out how to fund this. So they are going to apply for the GOCO grant again in September and hope they have a better chance. But, at some point we just got to take care of this. They are working on some grants for the community garden along the south side of the community center. So you'd step out of the senior center part of the community center and there'd be raised beds all in there. And they'd be working closely with the senior center too. And they're hoping to get some grants there. They'll have their new fee structures out before their June budget presentation. And there are apparently some new bikes at the community center, and a hip adductor is coming, and a stair climber is coming in soon. So some of the newer equipment's coming in, which is nice because that one spin bike has a cracked seat and it's not very comfortable. I'm just saying. So that's all my news.
Thank you. At least somebody had news. I've got some news too. So Tourism Council met, and so Cole Vida, our new agency that started in January, is getting up to speed on everything, getting budgets done. One snag that we ran into is we budgeted $10,000 for a website redesign to make it more user-friendly. They came back with a bid of 50 to 100,000. And so Tourism Board has decided to put it out for bid. And so we've asked staff to get that ready to put out for bid just because they interviewed, and in the interview, they said, oh yeah, we can do this. And then they came back with a lot higher number.
That's
So
not even the same planet.
no, it's
Well,
not.
lumber's up.
Yeah, that's right. Lumber is up.
Building
So,
stuff isn't cheap.
so we've had some interesting conversations, but I want to let council know that. So that one is going out. No, so the bid for just the website. So they've got a contract for the marketing side of it. And so they're moving right along with that. But that was an additional piece that wasn't part of that initial contract. So that is all.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I apologize.
That's all right. You have something else?
I was
thought you said you had
hopeful to
nothing.
get out of here without an update, but we were just told that the internet in this building just went down, and I hope that doesn't cause too many delays. So that's being worked on.
I can still hear you.
Attack.
That's great.
Sorry, Matthew. No.
And then
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Oh, great.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I never lost you guys.
No, that's great. Yeah, we weren't meeting for the meeting and what Shannon has it going through. We're meeting for other things happening in the building. So then the other piece of that is we did want to request of council this week. It was something I meant to mention earlier, but this week we're working with both Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper's offices. They have, there's a deadline of this Friday for congressional district spending requests. So this is part of the infrastructure bill. And then communities are asked to submit their projects. We've been in communication with them and utilizing any of the projects that we've already vetted through you all with the budget process. Most of these are road, bridge, and sewer projects that we've already identified in our budget process, where we're seeking grants already or already worked on design phases because these need to be shovel ready. But something we just learned is that we do also need to have a letter from the mayor, and just wanted to make sure you all would be okay in approving a letter that we submit these projects, and then that gets us in the running for possible funding. So again, they're not new projects that we haven't discussed or vetted in the budget process.
Sure you guys are all okay with me signing another letter?
I am.
You're going to be.
Listen, you only have one more meeting to put up with me. You're so lucky. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Matthew?
I am very okay with that.
All right. That gives you enough direction, Mike?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else? I'm going to call you Ken now. You jump in at the last minute, right? Anything else before I adjourn?
Well, so you are sending out an email, like you said earlier, about the election results. Where else will that be posted?
Oh, great question. So we will post those on social media, on the website. We send that to the media. We send that to council and all of the candidates. Again, those are unofficial. That's per state law because there's a 8-day curing period before results become official. We've got, in case, as an example, people turn those in. If the signature verification does not match, they have 8 days to come in and cure that. So results can change after, based on however many that occurs or overseas coming in that 8-day period. But we will release those unofficial results as soon as they are tallied tonight. And Shannon will be sending out emails and notifying the public and posting on all of on the fruita.org and our social media platforms.
Which, like Parks and Rec, or like what else do we have?
Just our general city, the City of Fruita Facebook.
And on the website you said too, correct? On the city website?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, fellow council, Mr. Mayor, for letting me join in later on this meeting.
You're welcome. All right, with that, it is 8:44. We are going to adjourn.